Hello and welcome to the August edition of the Art and Soul Show from Basement 13 here at IPSUM, Milton Road, Swindon. First up on this month's show, we have Dark Light by No Side Effects.
It's a day without sun. It's a night without a moon. Turn my hand, push away, shed the skin. It's a day without sun. It's a night without a moon. Turn my hand, push away, shed the skin. I can't control how I feel and my mind. It's all this is. It's all this is. I can't control how I feel and my mind. It's all it is. It's all this is. Stuck red eyes, opaque sky, scraping teeth, obscure side. Lift my head, shift my feet, move outside. Stuck red eyes, opaque sky, scraping teeth, obscure side. Lift my head, shift my feet, move outside. I can't control how I feel and my mind. It's all it is. It's all this is. I can't control how I feel and my mind. It's all it is. It's all this is. I can't control how I feel and my mind. It's all it is. It's all this is. I can't control how I feel and my mind. It's all it is. It's all this is. I can't control how I feel and my mind. It's all it is. It's all this is.
That was No Side Effects with Dark Light. Look out for the album coming out later this year. Up next, our very own James Osborne with his weird waves.
That was Weird Waves by James Osborne.
And now on the Art and Soul Show, we have the first of a two-part interview over 2 months. Here, our man James Osborne talks to 3 ladies from Swindon who have written a book called Tenacity about their family member struggles with addiction and the tragedies that followed.
So I'm here with Julie, Michelle and Sarah. to talk about a book called Tenacity. Now, I'm very excited about this because I think the topic of this book is something that's really, really important to talk about openly with. So, can you guys just sum up what the book's about?
Well, the book is called Tenacity, and it's about family addiction. And we tell the story through the mother's perspective of what happened to their sons. And it's not just about drug addiction, but we go back on the family history. And the message is it can happen to anyone, basically.
Yeah.
So we tell the journey of these two young men,
Yeah.
and how they got into taking drugs and their addiction, and what influenced them along the path of that journey.
But it's quite a unique book because, as you say, you're telling it from the mother's perspective.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting to have that interesting angle and that interesting sort of thought process behind it. So who wrote the book? Because there's quite a lot of you here. Who are the writers?
Well, the three of us wrote it together, which is
Yeah.
Julie is obviously the mother of Scott, and Nisha and Sarah, the siblings of Stephen, because it's actually two mothers' story, separate
Yeah,
individual
yeah.
stories which interlink, because the mothers were friends, and obviously the boys grew up together as childhood
Yeah.
friends. So the three of us at the kitchen table with the laptop, we just started 5 years ago. It took 3 years to write,
Yeah.
and obviously it's taken us 2 years to try and get it out there. It's a story that can benefit families, not just in this country, but all over the world. And many of the details in the book, obviously, it is from the mother's perspective about, it's not the addict itself, it's about what these mothers go through to try and get their sons clean. The tenacity is obviously to never give up, and they never did. And it's basically whoever is going through this, it could be mums, dads, carers, grandparents, whatever. It's really there to give some comfort, some hope, some advice, and all the drugs knowledge that, you know, if you're in the dark about it, you've just got a teenager, you know, coming into that stage, then, you know, I really think that you should be made aware of what to look for, and that's sort of why.
Yeah, it is a family disease. So, you know, when reading the book, it is an education, and I think all parents should read it, whether they're worried about their kids going on drugs or not. I think it's a signs to look out for, and it's a stigma, and it is something that's swept under the carpet. But I think if they read this, they get a good insight as to what a monster and how ugly addiction is,
Yeah.
and it takes them on that journey
So-
through that.
There was someone else involved in the writing of the book who isn't here. So tell me about Marilyn.
Marilyn is my mother. She knew about the book, and she was all for it. And she got ill with breast cancer, and she died. And me and Sarah just carried on with it, you know, not straight away, but you know, when we felt ready, because she went through hell, and we sort of knew we had to get her story out, you know, what she went through. She felt very alone, like you do, and obviously it was great because Julie wanted to get her story out as well, so we could go and do this unique story of two mothers, you know, and it's solely with Marilyn from her perspective, even though myself and Sarah wrote the book.
So tell me about the two sons. Tell me about who they were, what they enjoyed doing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Scott obviously was my son.
Yeah.
And he had a lovely personality. He left school. He seemed to know what he wanted to do, and he went straight into college, did carpentry, got his sitting guilds. I didn't feel I had to really worry about him because he was really so good, you know. He was a good lad, really. And had a girlfriend, earning great money. I think for him, it was the people around him, peer pressure. I didn't pick up on the signs. I wasn't educated. I had no idea at all. And for me, it started from him smoking, going on to weed, you know, and then I'd be finding bits of silver paper in the bedroom, you know, and he was taking heroin in the end. But even then, I still never twigged, because I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't educated. And I don't think he really realised how dangerous it was, and his friends around them. So there was a group of people at that time, group of young lads at that time, and girls, that got into it. So, from a mother's point of view, my message is, pick up on those and educate yourself, understand what drugs are all about, get that knowledge, read up on it, understand it, look for the signs, and the kids as well, they need to understand it and realise what it can do to them, not just give them serious illnesses or, I've seen young people with, they'll lose their leg, their eye, and ultimately death.
Addiction is a real serious problem.
That is the true reality, and it is a monster.
Yeah, it's a real problem in today's society. Do you think that society in general plays a role in addiction and creating the circumstances where addiction takes place?
Yeah, I definitely do, because I think there's so much pressure out there today to pressure, earn lots of money, be good at everything and be beautiful, and no one can always keep up with that. And I think there is so much pressure, and it's tough out there, and kids struggle to cope. And so, yeah, I definitely do think society does play a role in that.
Yeah. So you decided to write this book. Tell me, what was the decision process behind that? What was the conversation that was had to kick it all off?
I think it was the phone call from Michelle.
Yeah, my career just I've sort of lost it, so I was sort of on the scrap heap, really. And I knew I had that story behind us, and I wanted to do it with Stephen because I just knew it wasn't normal. So when my career went, I said to Sarah,
Sorry, what was your career in?
My career, I was studying in counselling on and off, and it sort of, it didn't sort of go as it should have done. So obviously my backup was the book, and I said to Sarah about it. Sarah said, yeah, let's do it. Let's work from home and let's do it. So, and I always thought about Julie because Scott and Stephen were friends, and then one day Julie made a phone call to see how my mum was because my mum had cancer, and then I said to Julie, I'm thinking of doing this book. I'm thinking of doing a book, and she said, oh God, I want to do it. Can I come in with you? We didn't know at that time how we were going to do it, and I said, yeah, with open arms, that'd be great. And we just had a meeting, and we kept having meetings before, we started the writing, and me and Sarah done the writing together on the kitchen table at the house, at my house, and Julie would do hers separately at her house, but we would get together for meetings to see how we were doing, disclosing confidential, personal, sensitive information. So we've built up a real bond between the three of us now.
Yeah, I mean, it was a phone call, basically. I mean, at the time, to be honest, I didn't really feel strong enough to go over that story again. It's very personal, very close to me, being my son. I didn't know really whether I could do it, but I just felt I had to get that information out there, because you go through hell. The whole family goes through hell, it's a knock-on effect. So I think in terms of how I've coped is, it's been a great therapy to write my side of the story, and it's helped me get through a terrible time. I mean, losing a child is probably one of the worst things that can ever happen to a human being. And writing the book is certainly a great therapy. I've got back into music now, back into my violin. I do a little bit more writing. And that's why I admire the work that you're doing here at IPSUM with the art and the music. And, within that recovery process, I really do think it's very beneficial to recovery.
So that was part one of our interview with the writers of Tenacity. Look out for part two in the next show. Next up, our very own Richie P with Make Me Flow.
champ?
Feels very good. It feels familiar.
And welcome to the joke of the month. As a kid, I was made to walk the plank. We couldn't afford a dog.
This is Love and Passion by the IPSUM Collective here at Basement 13. And we're back. Brian Barber's Adventures in Faraway Lands. How's it going, Brian?
Pretty good.
We're here today and we're going to talk about the civil war in Liberia.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about that. Like, set the scene for us. What was the war about? You know.
Okay, well, this is in 2003.
Okay.
I'd gone out in March 2003 to build 26 radio stations. Charles Taylor, the president, decided I was a spy working for the CIA, so he gave me two secret policemen to stay with me, which was a bit boring. But the two rebel factions...
How did you know they were policemen?
Oh, because they wore black suits and black shades.
Oh, but...
And they were hot and sweaty, and everybody else wore sensible
clothes. Are you actually
clothes.
allowed to talk about it? Cause
I actually used to talk to them and give them water occasionally.
All right, I was going to say, I thought it was a secret, you know.
No, they were just there and then doing it, you know. It was wonderful. In fact, they were quite useful. They got me out of a scrape with the immigration services at one stage.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, so they had their uses.
Yeah, so what were they fighting about? What was
well, you see, the problem was Charles Taylor was a despot. big time despot. He was raping the country of all its raw materials, its woods, its iron ore, the rubber, all of that went.
Yeah.
Shipping lines were using the flag of convenience, all the money from that went into his pocket.
Right.
The rebels, there were two groups, LURD, which was Liberians United for Reconciliation and Democracy, and MODEL, which was the movement for democracy and liberty, decided they'd had enough.
Okay.
And so they decided to attack the capital.
Okay.
And
Did they team up, or were they
yeah,
still separate?
they were still separate, but they did team up. They decided they would go both together to attack Monrovia.
Cool.
I was in Monrovia, and the attack started, and we couldn't get out. And so it was, what do you do? We went to the EU compound, and we're basically waiting there for the war to finish. But it was all around us, and people were shooting at each other. But we eventually got rescued, but that didn't help the people who were there. The locals had a really rough time.
Yeah.
Some of the rebels, generals, they had some very odd names.
Yeah.
There was General Mosquito,
Okay.
because he was a man that went and bit people, sort of killed them.
Seriously,
Well,
I was
no,
about to ask if that's what it was.
No,
but
it was about the fact that he went in and killed quick.
Oh, right,
And
okay.
out
yeah,
again,
yeah.
out. And then there was General Peanut, who used to love peanuts.
Okay,
And then there was General Butt Naked.
right.
General Butt Naked used to go into battle stark naked,
Okay.
just to frighten the opposite side. Because
So just him and I presume a gun.
oh yeah, he'd have his
Yeah,
AK-47
yeah.
and all his troops around him who weren't naked, but the general was, and they used
That
to go
just
in
makes
and
it weird.
frighten people. He used to frighten people.
At least if they were all naked, it would make sense. But
No, just a general.
that's a bit strange. You were saying to me earlier that some of the soldiers dress as women.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting development. Logical development, if you believe in the fact that a bullet,
Yeah.
one little bullet,
Uh-huh.
has your name on it. If that bullet has got your name on it and it's fired, it will kill you.
That's what they train you in some of the different armies across the world, isn't it? That there's a bullet somewhere with your name on
Yeah,
it.
right. Well,
So live as if the next
Yes.
bullet that comes at you is that one.
yeah. So what happens in Liberia is that the soldiers thought, well, if there's a bullet with my name on it, I'll deceive it. I'll dress as a woman. I'll put a wig on and a dress, and it won't know it's me. And so the bullets wouldn't get to me.
Yeah.
So that's what happened,
But I guess there's kind of a logic in that as well, because if you're dressed as a woman and not a soldier, you're less likely to be shot anyway.
No, not in African wars. People
Oh, okay.
tend to shoot anybody. Even,
Is it just
they even
yeah.
shoot children. But
okay?
so if you're a woman, you don't think that's going to protect you.
Yeah. So were there child soldiers or?
Yes, child soldiers. To be a child soldier, you have to be big enough to carry an AK-47.
Okay.
And the child soldiers, they had a pretty rough time
Yeah, I can
because
imagine.
they're going to be used on front line, particularly when it came to the Americans. The Americans had 3 ships parked off the Liberian coast.
Okay. So they
And-
were involved as well.
Well, they should have sent the Marines in to stop this battle
Okay.
in the city, but they couldn't. Because if they'd sent their Marines in, who would they be killing? They'd be killing children.
Oh,
Now, could you
wow.
imagine the media filming children being killed by American troops?
Yeah.
So the Americans could not come
yeah.
and do anything. It took the Nigerians to broker a deal to get him to resign and go into exile in Nigeria.
Right.
So that's how they got him out.
Now, what about some of the soldiers thought they were invulnerable?
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah. Well, you see, witch doctors have a lot to answer for.
Uh-huh.
The witch doctors came up with this concept that if they did certain incantations, the soldiers would not be killed by anybody's bullets. They would never be harmed.
I bet they made some paper off of that, didn't they? I bet they earned off of that.
They
yeah.
probably did. But anyway, what happened? The soldiers went into battle and some of them were killed. And of course, the ones who didn't get killed said, I'm invulnerable. He
Yeah.
must have done something wrong.
Right, yeah.
But, you if you go into the next battle, you get killed.
Yeah, I mean, how do you, say you're already dead? So how do you say, well, it didn't work?
Yes, quite.
Like,
So it's the witch doctors gaining a bit of financial reward for basically nothing.
yeah. So what happened with this war in the end? How did it turn out? Like,
Well,
what was the...
What happened was that the rebels came into the city and opened fire and used cannons and mortars and everything and created a lot of havoc and destruction in the city. The Nigerians, who were part of ECOMOS, decided that
what's
ECOMOS is one of these economic... God, I can't even remember this one. It's to do with the economic group of West Africa or something.
Oh, so it's
that.
like an economic area.
Yeah, it's like the EU would be, or you'd get UNMIL as another one. The UN UNMIL is the UN team that were providing peacekeepers for Liberia after the war. ECOMOS was what the Nigerians were part of.
Yeah.
They came in and arranged that Charles Taylor could go into exile in Nigeria. 3 planes left Monrovia, full of money, gold, and family.
Wow.
Into Nigeria.
Okay.
And so the country was basically broke, and they had to start again. Well,
So was the country on a independent gold-based currency at the time?
It was on the Liberian dollar.
Okay.
It wasn't gold-based, but it was Liberian dollars. And what happened, I got evacuated in the middle of it, so I went back in September, and we had a chairman now running the country, and it was very much about rebuilding the whole of the economy.
Wow.
But corruption, God, was there corruption?
Yeah.
All of the ministers got a brand new Toyota Land Cruiser, 4-wheel drive, posh job. They all got one each. Then there was not enough money to pay for other things like the health service.
Oh dear.
And so it was quite tough. And the worst part of it was...
So the rebels won effectively.
The rebels...
And they were starting to sort of rebuild.
Well, they did, but you see, although the rebels seemed to have won, they didn't.
Okay,
because when you start looking at what happened to them, for instance, the generals, they brought in British and other military experts to reconstitute their army.
Yep.
And so what they did was, well, we can't have these generals.
Yeah.
I mean, they've never been to staff college. They've got no idea what they're doing. They're not even fit to run a car park. So, no, we're not going to do it.
So, it sounds as though it was quite an intense time. So, how are things now in terms of the sort of overhang from that?
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Things are so much better. Sirleaf Johnson, Elaine Sirleaf Johnson, the last president, cut down on the corruption and brought in a lot of democracy. My radio team went from 26 stations, they've now got 50.
Oh, wow.
And so, things are so much better. But I don't know what's going to happen under the new president because he did have connections with Taylor. So I'm not sure what will happen there.
Well, thank you very much for coming in to speak to us again, Brian. And we look forward to the next Brian Barber's Adventures in Faraway Lands.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we have a piece of music by IPSUM client Debbie, made in Basement 13.
That was IPSUM clients Debbie, and now we have David Millard with A Country Walk with Richie P of Basement 13.
bloody rabbit alone. Come on. You get lost. Come on. Come on, time to go home. Come on, babe. Come on, babe. You better get a move on, or we're gonna get wet. Leave that rabbit alone. Come on. Here you go. Come on.
From David Millard's Walk in the Country to a cover of a Van Morrison song, Into the Mystic by IPSUM's very own Mature Mondays.
We were born before the wind, also younger than the sun. Ere the funny boat was won, as we sailed into the hark now hear sailors cry, smell the sea and feel the sky. Let your soul and spirit fly into the mystic. When that foghorn blows, I will be coming home. When that foghorn blows, I want to hear it. I don't want to fear it, and I want to rock your gypsy soul, just like way back in the days of old. And together we will flow into the mystic.
That was Into the Mystic by the Mature Mondays, recorded here at IPSUM. And now our own Chris Haynes interviews Adrian and Julie from Swindon Search and Rescue.
Hi, welcome to the Art and Soul Show. Today we have for you Adrian Sawyer and Julie Strauss from the Wiltshire Search and Rescue Team. Have come along to talk to us about the service they provide in the area. Obviously a very interesting team. Adrian, can you tell us a little bit about how Wiltshire Search and Rescue started and how it works in the area?
So Wiltshire Search and Rescue is a charity that's been running for 18 years now.
Right.
It's a team of volunteers who support fire, police and ambulance service, providing search and rescue within Wiltshire, and also will offer support to neighbouring counties as well. So what we're trying to achieve is to find missing vulnerable people and get them to a place of safety.
Okay, so you work with the three other services, you work alongside them as well. So whereabouts are you based as a team? Presumably you're all dotted around, are you, in the county? How does that...
Yeah, our volunteers come from all over Wiltshire,
Right.
but we're based in the centre of the county in Devizes at the police HQ, so that gives us a pretty good coverage. We can get to any incidents within the county quite rapidly.
Okay. So when you were called out, how does it work in terms of how many would you get involved, or is it who's available? How does it work with, well, for instance, working alongside the police if they contact you and said, well, we're looking for somebody? Would it just be how big a group would get involved?
So it very much depends on what the call out is. So
Right.
we'll get a phone call from the police control room from one of the senior officers there,
Yeah.
and they'll be looking to use us as a resource alongside helicopters,
Okay.
and gathering intelligence and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Within our team we have 50 operational members, but at various different times of the day. Some will be on call, some will be off call.
Yes.
So if we find that it's going to be quite a demanding call out and we need lots of personnel, then we might call on one of our neighbouring teams in Berkshire or Hampshire or
Right.
Dorset,
Okay.
to come and assist us. And likewise, if they've got a big deployment on, we'll
Right.
move the other way as well.
So it's
support
not,
them.
it's not unique to Wiltshire then. Other counties have a similar service, is that right?
Yeah, so within England and Wales, each county will either have a mountain rescue team or a lowland rescue team. Generally, it's the counties with the sort of the pointy things like Cumbria, Wales, etc.
Right.
That will have mountain rescue teams. But within the UK, there are 35 lowland rescue teams. Covering the majority of where the population is.
It's quite a resource, really, as a countrywide. It's quite a, because you mentioned that it's made up of volunteers, so that's right. So no one's actually being paid for this as such, are they?
No.
No. So it's So presumably it's from different organisations like yourself works for the ambulance service. Is that right? So you have people from different services like that, or
yeah, so our volunteers, we've got some who are either serving or ex-military personnel. We've got a few that come from the statutory, the blue light emergency services, but we've also got teachers, locksmiths, farmhands, people from all walks of life.
Yeah. Because Julie, you're involved with the organisation as well, because you're not from an emergency services background, is that right?
No, I'm actually a teaching assistant in a special school.
Right.
So, yeah.
So how long have you been involved with the organisation?
I've been on the edges of the organisation, sort of helping for a couple of years, but only recently, probably within the last 3 or 4 months, I've been qualified as a search technician. So there are competencies that you have to sort of meet to be able to actually be on the team. And you actually, it's quite a rite of passage, because you get a red jacket when you've reached search technician sort of standard. You get a red jacket. It's quite proud to wear that.
Yes. So what does the training involve? How long does the training take? Is that one for Adrian? Yeah.
So the training takes roughly about 6 months.
Okay.
We work to national standards, so it doesn't matter if you've got a search technician coming from Yorkshire or from Kent or from Wiltshire.
Mhm.
Everyone's trained to the same standards, so it means that we can all work together at big incidents.
Yeah.
We cover off 14 different training modules. And there's some online learning as well, and that takes about 6 months to complete.
Yeah.
All the while you're starting to understand how the team operates, getting used to working alongside the current operational team members. So after that 6 months, when you get that red jacket, you're ready to go, and on your first call out, you're already really well integrated into the team.
Right. And then it's a case of just gaining experience, I suppose. There's nothing like actually doing some call-outs and seeing how it all works.
And once you've become a search technician, most people will specialise in some particular field. Or
I was going to ask you about that. So there are obviously specialties that people are involved with. I mean, one thing that particularly interests me is the sort of searching rivers and lakes and things like that. So presumably do you have divers or people who get more involved in the water searching, or is that not something that's...
So not divers per se, but we do have a water team. So these are personnel who are trained to either search up to sort of the banks of rivers and canals or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or we've got our highly trained water rescue personnel who'll either enter the water to search, to look for a person, or they may be deployed into a flood situation.
Yeah.
So Lowland Rescue over the past few years has attended flooding events, for example, in Chertsey in Surrey a few years ago.
Right.
It was a big deployment for us in a flooding situation.
Yeah, I can imagine floods would be a time where you were in demand, because it's just such a difficult time for everyone, isn't it?
And again, we're trained to the same standards as firefighters, so we can make joint teams up with them, with RNLI, lifeboat crew as well, because we all work to the same common standards. We can fit together really nicely like a jigsaw when the time comes.
Yeah, it's a very valuable resource, isn't it? Particularly when there's the worry and concern when people do go missing. What's your main sort of call out, a typical call out for you? Is it what sort of people do you?
So missing person call outs are kind of our bread and butter. The vast majority of our call outs will come from the police. Although we did have one this week from the ambulance service to assist with a hang glider that had crashed and they needed help getting this person off the side of a hill. But as I say, over 95% of our call outs come from the police. And they'll generally be categorised. So we might have a missing child who, say, suffers from autism. We might have an elderly person who suffers with dementia, who's gone wandering in the night, and when their carers have come in the morning, they've discovered they're missing. But around about half of our call-outs tend to be for people suffering from mental health problems. So we would categorise them either as despondent or as suicidal. So the police assess the level of risk, and if it's deemed that they're high risk, so there's a potential threat to their life, they look at bringing in lots of different resources, and we're one of those to get boots on the ground and try and find them as quickly as possible.
It's a fantastic service. I hadn't really heard about it myself until actually had a discussion with Julie the other week, so I thought it would be really interesting to talk to you guys. If you wanted to get involved or volunteer, how would we go about that? If you wanted to sort of do some fundraising or actually come along physically and volunteer?
So we look for both operational members who are going to get out there and do the hard work, but we're also looking for support members as well. So we're a small charity. We've got no paid staff, and everyone has to get involved with fundraising, because if the money isn't coming in to our collection tins, then we're not going to have fuel in our vehicles to get out there and do what we need to do. So the easiest way for people to get involved is to go to our website. So it's wilsar.org.uk. That's WILSAR, Wilsar. and you can find frequently asked questions on there about what it means to be a part of the team.
Okay. No, that's great. That really does summarise it well. Thanks for coming along, Adrian, especially I know it's in your lunch break, actually, and Julie as well. That's great. Interesting to meet you. Very interesting service. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, from search and rescue to a song written specially for us called IPSUM. It's been written by our volunteer, John Joe Higgins, and he recorded it here just last month in our studio at Basement 13. So this is IPSUM by John Joe Higgins. Enjoy.
A day of self and wonder, no pity, just peace of mind. Clutter to be gotten rid of, bad thoughts must be put behind. To wake at last in the morning, rested a day of hope, a day full of meaning and glory. We're off the slippery slope. One life, one chance, let's live it. Each day to improve on the last. Peace and a program of oneness. Don't rush or go too fast. Give and share together. Time for each and every one. People matter to each other. We live beneath the same sun. Spirit, mind and body make us human like what we are. A life to live together. Together we travel far. A life to live together. Together we travel far.
That was a track called IPSUM by John Joe Higgins. Rusty Goat's back again. This poem is titled Pencil Marks on Pages. She's the type of girl who listens to Bach and Beethoven, and I'm the guy who just superglued the cap from his tooth back on. I'm not saying it's a case of where you're from or social status, but we walk and talk in different circles. That's what became obvious. You see, my day is spent drinking tea and writing poetry. No direction or purpose, for now this may be. But I have plans to be making changes. I'm not talking about reworking world order, nor do I have the ability to fix global conflicts or war. But you've heard me utter these words before. I'm hatching plans. I'll chip away at it one day at a time, and I'll not go down as one of history's greatest, but I'll leave a legacy that reaches out further than a positive update of a Facebook status. For my boys, my family, I show a development in my well-being. And if this alone is my legacy, the positive pieces from this they are seeing. Reflections from a life of struggles. Yes, we've all had our own troubles. Own these times, they are yours. I'll not change the world with words, but I'll make a difference to those who are my world. And for those who gain inspiration from my unpunctuated ramblings, I thank you for listening. Life can be as bleak as listening to Parachutes by Coldplay, but what are you saying? I'm listening. My door is always open, metaphorically speaking, if it's solace and a mug of tea you are seeking. Life changes. People, places, faces. Some remain the greatest, others life's detritus. Cut the strings and show forgiveness. I'll continue to shift words and emotions. For me, tea and poetry are energising therapy. Books full of pencil marks on pages, shifting perspectives, making changes.
And we have now reached the end of the Art and Soul Show from IPSUM. We're going to finish off this time around this month with a track by Richie P and Mike B called Destiny. Join us again next month for some more arty, soul-y goodness from here at Basement 13 IPSUM.